Hi, you're watching TechCrunch TV. My name is Colleen Taylor. Here in the studio with us today is the co-founder of MassiveHealth, Mr. Aza Raskin. Hi, Aza.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Awesome.
Good. So first, to start off, I know you have some news for us and some data that you're going to show, but just to start off, could you explain what MassiveHealth is?
Sure. So MassiveHealth, we're a company. I come from Firefox, where I help lead creative. We have people from like core Apple TV engineers and core Linden Lab engineers. If you've used any of those products, you've used something we've either designed or made. We take all of that know-how to make products about people's health that they love to use. We're trying to consumerize healthcare and health, make health human in the same way that technology has been consumerized in the last 20 years.
Well, last year in February, you raised a little over $2 million in funding, two and a quarter. Yeah, and then you unveiled your first app, Eatery, in November 2011, and now we're 6-7 months later, and you're ready to show us some of the data that app has gotten?
That's right. So we released the Eatery as an experiment. To see, can you get people to even care about what they eat? And it turns out the answer is yes. So something like 8 million ratings later and 500,000 foods that people have taken, we can tell you some really interesting things about the way people eat. So I'm going to start with one sort of like philosophical thing and then move into the actual data. And that is, do you know Peter Norvig? So he's famously said that data is 10 times smarter than algorithms. So this is based on a paper called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Data. What does it show? Well, they're working on a particular problem in machine learning, and they have 5 different algorithms. And they train it on 1 million words, 10 million words, 100 million words, and 1 billion words. And of course, the algorithms get better over the increasing corpus size. But here's the interesting thing. Every time you increase the corpus by an order of magnitude, the very best algorithm from 1 million is beaten by the very worst algorithm at 10 million. So data really is 10 times smarter than algorithms. This is true from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and 100 to 1 billion. So what does this say? Well, this says that if you can get more data, an order of magnitude, it doesn't make sense really to talk about algorithms. So why do I bring this up? Because for us, we look at this in medicine and science. But in medicine, when we're looking at creating interventions, those are the algorithms, we're not basing the findings and the interventions on 1 million or 100 million. We're basing them on 10 people or 100 people, sometimes thousands of people, never 100,000 or almost ever, and never 1 million. But this is the scale at which startups and consumer products excel. And so what I'm excited about is, well, what I'm scared about is that by 2020, 52% of Americans will be diabetic or pre-diabetic. This is according to United Health and the CDC. That means if you flip a coin, for the average American, if it comes up heads, they're diabetic. It's because we're not making products that work the way people do.
It's interesting to hear you talk this way because, I mean, the Eatery app is just, for the user, it's just kind of this really pretty app that allows you to take pictures of your food in the same way that maybe people would take pictures of Instagram, Instagram of their latte or whatever. And so it's funny that you have these really big ideas, but the app itself is kind of, simple in a way.
And it turns out, so all the Eatery does is you say, take a picture of your food and rate it fit to fat. And it helps you be conscientious about what you're eating. Because we've seen with really large studies, these are the 10,000 person studies, that simply writing down what you eat, not the calories, just writing it down, increases your weight loss for whatever diet you're on by 2x. And helps you hit your goals 40% more. And that's just about being conscientious. It tightens up the feedback loop. And that's what the Eatery does. But this data is really useful. So first, one of the things we often get asked is this crowdsourced data even meaningful? Okay. And so we looked at how well we can predict, using the crowdsourced ratings of an entire city, how well that predicts the obesity rate there. If it predicts it well, that means our data is really meaningful. And it turns out that, as you can see, the data actually matches up very well. We can predict how healthy or how obese a nation is or a city is based entirely on the kinds of food that are eaten there and how well it's rated.
So what's the breakdown here of Eatery users? And because I remember I talked to you months ago, a few days after you had launched the app, and like a lot of iPhone apps, it was very popular in the beginning in San Francisco and New York City. Can you tell me about how the geographic dispersal of the app's usage has been?
Sure. So actually, I can do you one better, and I'll show you one of the things we've been working on, which is a heat map of where people eat in the world and how it works.
Okay.
So it's actually used all across the world. This is a 24-hour eating graph. So you can see breakfast, which is super healthy, spreading across the US, followed by, here we go, it's a little bit slower now. You can see down the center, the Midwest eats really terribly, actually. And you can see sort of the UK lighting up a little bit red in here. So there's a whole bunch of data. It's used pretty much everywhere now, from Japan to China to Copenhagen to Boston to New York.
I see. And red means bad, and
Yes.
green means good.
Red means bad, green means good, yellow sort of in the middle there.
Great.
We now can start telling you a lot more about how people eat, not in a lab, but everywhere. So I don't know if you know this, but can you guess which is the healthiest, breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
I would say maybe lunch.
So turns out breakfast is by far the healthiest. So here's a graph over the course of a day of people who eat breakfast versus those who don't. And it turns out that when you average it all out, people who eat breakfast eat 12.3% healthier throughout the rest of the day. And in fact, they eat 6% less in terms of portions as well. So it really does matter. And what's cool for me here is that you can actually just see this. This is all, and the data correlates back to actual obesity levels. It means that this is in some ways very real.
Are there new features that you're working on or new apps that you're working on that will help people kind of take more control and fix their behavior?
Yeah. So what's really important about eating well is sort of conscientiousness. A great example of this, I'll actually show it over here. One of the things we found is we asked people when they sign up, do you follow any sort of dietary restriction? Are you pescatarian? Are you vegan? Do you do low carb? The strange thing we discovered is that anyone that says that they have any kind of restriction immediately eats, at the very minimum, 16% better. And it's on average, I think it's like 22% better across everything. Vegans appear to eat the best, and pescatarians are sort of at the bottom of the mix. Low carb people are right in the middle. So what does this mean? This means that choosing any diet, any lifestyle change for eating matters a lot. And that's a very small thing most people can do. So we roll a lot of these things back into the Eatery.
And when you say you roll that back into the app, is that just a constant process, or is that something you've done with app updates since it launched back in November?
So it's a lot of this stuff is soon to be coming out, but these are constant pushes and rolls into the product. The goal here is, now that we know so much about how people really eat in the world, it helps us make products which, again, work the way people do.
So let's talk about just MassiveHealth as a company now, because if you've gotten this much data just from your one app in a matter of months, can you tell me any numbers about how many employees you guys have, any ideas about really what's next, how you guys are thinking about these next few months going forward?
Yeah, so now it gets really exciting. So I think we've had great traction for the Eatery. We're around 10 people. And going up just a little bit more in the next couple of months. And what's next is of course something like I can't tell you everything about it, but here's the way I think about it. One, we're not a mobile app company. We just happen to think that mobile apps are a particularly good way of getting distribution at the beginning. If you break down health, there's sort of 5 buckets or columns that I think you should think about. And this is true for us. We're really about tackling like the true chronic diseases, the true acute pains, and health and wellness happens to be a particularly great way of getting in there. We are about creating large consumer demand. So if you look at all health and chronic care too, it's broken up into 5 things. There's eating, which probably accounts for 40-50% of your overall health. There's exercise, there's sleep, there is stress, and then there's adherence, so things like taking your pills and remembering to finish your antibiotics course. So you can expect in the next couple of months, year, some other applications that work well in these other spaces. I guess the one hint that I'd leave is that it feels sort of like a tricorder.
I see. And how do you look at the competitive landscape? Because you guys are completely focused on this health stuff, but Path is a social network that is very much about quantifying your health and fitness. I mean, even Facebook now with the timeline has apps that plug in. I mean, what's the benefit of you guys just being focused here on the one thing?
So in many ways, it's just about, well, to the user, the interface is the product. And if you're sitting down to understand your eating, or your weight, or something about, say, your blood glucose, the sharing model is very different from Facebook and very different than even Path. The way that you share is a little bit more private, probably. And the kinds of insights you gain are also very different. So Facebook probably wouldn't be able to give you analytics on the kinds of things that you eat. Or if they do, it's not going to be the thing they really focus on. Same thing with Path. Beautiful, beautiful product. And you take pictures and you put them in there, and it'll even integrate with the various ways that you run, but will it connect it back to how you're sleeping and how that sleeping affects your stress levels and how that stress level comes back and affects the way that you run? Probably not, in the way you eat. So it's that kind of deep data analytics combined with user experience, which is laser focused on solving your problems, that changes us from sort of a lifestyle company into a company which is really about health. Because health happens in between doctor visits, and you need to have something there by your side that helps you make the decisions that you wanted to make.
Great. And so, and also, can you talk very briefly about your sort of revenue strategy or how you guys are going to make money?
Sure. So there's an impending crisis on the horizon. In fact, it's not even on the horizon everywhere. It's just like, it's halfway there. Everyone can see it coming. 2/3 of self-insured companies, the companies like GM and Boeing, they're the major ones, are already either considering or paying their employees direct money, just incentives, to try to be healthier. Because, frankly, it costs a lot to take care of unhealthy people. So if that's the case, you can see how, if we can do what we say we do, and in fact we can, although I don't have them in infographic form, we've shown that after people use the Eatery for 30 days, they eat 8% better, or at least they correlate to. And after 3 months, you're like, well, does it sustain? Yeah, it sustains at around the 11% level. So if we can do that, it turns out monetization here, it's not that hard. There's already a lot of money being put into it, and it's just a demonstrable way of improving the health and engagement of a clientele. Similarly, you can see that there's, in med-adherence, I was talking before about the fact that 1 out of every 5 Americans doesn't finish their antibiotics course. Well, there's $30 billion left on the table for just people not fulfilling their prescriptions and for the ramifications of not taking your meds.
So it seems like it's not quite the advertising model. It's kind of going after these larger, more, singly focused entities.
Yeah, whether it's payers, insurance providers, or self-insured companies. I'd say this, in the next 20 years, there's not going to be $1 billion company in the consumerization of healthcare. There are going to be $20 billion companies. And
one last question here. I mean, how do you guys, can you give me any idea of the stickiness of these apps? I mean, how the retention is for people who download them, and then also how you guys are working on keeping that stickiness level up or increasing it? I mean, are there any tips or tricks that you guys have to the UI experience? Yeah,
so we've discovered that Fit or Fat, this very cute little game, is incredibly addicting. We've tried to shy away from overt gamification, where you just throw badges or other things at people. They're useful, but I think providing that core feedback loop is even more powerful. That UI and product is not just about engagement, it's also about marketing, and it's also about ease of use. It's like all of those things, which is why I think there's this rise of product people in the Valley as it stands now.
Cool. And any numbers that you can give on the number of people who download it versus the people who end up using it, once a day or anything like that?
So we're not giving out those numbers, but I can say that it's certainly much better than average. Given the size of the data we have, I think it sort of speaks for itself.
Great. Well, cool. Aza, thank you so much for coming by and telling us about MassiveHealth and the results from the Eatery app, and we look forward to hearing more from you guys soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.